Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Mobi. I'm Dr. Mobi, and today we are honored to have a great guest, Scott Page. And let's welcome Scott.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mobi, for having me on your show.
Great, sir. So, welcome to Lifestyle TV show. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. What kind of work you do? So, for audience sake.
Yeah, I've been kind of combination of a musician entrepreneur. As a musician, I'm mostly known from being the saxophone player in Pink Floyd. So I've rock and rolled for many years and played in many bands. And I've also played with Supertramp and Toto and everybody from James Brown to Chuck Berry to just variety of things. So I've been a musician for many years, but I've also been a serial entrepreneur. I'm on my fourth company right now. I had one company called Seventh Level, which was a publicly traded company, and my background has really sort of been in the combination of technology and entertainment. So I've sort of spanned between those two areas. I grew up in a musical family. I've been around music all my life. My father was in a band called the Lawrence Welk Show, which was on television early days. So I grew up around television when I was young. I'm just one of those people that's very curious about a lot of things.
Okay, I see in the backdrop nice records. Tell me a little bit about those records.
Let me see. Those are Pink Floyd and Toto. So those are Pink Floyd records that I'd got, gold and platinum records that I was on with them. So, and
Wow.
Toto, and there's other things too. Those are the ones that happen to be behind me there.
I love Pink Floyd and Toto. Both were my favorite. So tell me, which album did you do or did you have for Pink Floyd?
Pink Floyd. I played on Momentary Lapse of Reason, and then Delicate Sound of Thunder. And then there was some series of other things that were released in Europe, but those are the main albums. I started the later years. I started when Dave went off and did from 1980. I was 86 to kind of 90, 92, something like that. The dates I did. So I did several albums and toured the world with him, playing in that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow, that is amazing. That was always my dream to see them live or at least be in their concert. But yeah, I know he's having hearing loss and probably he's not performing anymore, right? So.
Dave's gone out on his solo tours. Roger goes out on his. He's been doing his tour, so they've still been active. But I don't think Pink Floyd will go out again. I think that's pretty much done. When Rick passed away, and there's always been this sort of little rub between Dave and Roger that's been going on for a long time. So my guess is they probably won't go out again. But I could be wrong. You never know.
Mm. So tell me, what among Pink Floyd's work, what was your favorite?
Playing with them. You mean as far as what song?
Yeah, like which album?
For me, I always enjoyed one of my favorite songs to play with Pink Floyd was Us and Them. It was, there's a lot of saxophone in it, and it's a beautiful ballad, and it's always was one of my favorite things. But the record I played on Dogs of War on the album, so that was the solos I put on that. Just there's a lot of great things about Pink Floyd. Incredible brand, powerful around the world. I mean, I had no idea, which is funny. When I started with Pink Floyd, I really didn't know much about Pink Floyd. I never really listened to them at the time. I got called to play on the record. I met Dave Gilmour when I was playing in Supertramp, and we were doing a Supertramp album. Dave was a guest to come on to the show, onto that album. I mean, came onto the album, and I met him there. And then that night, I had a gig down the street. He came down, hung out, and then a few weeks later, I got a call to go put some solos on the Pink Floyd album. So I went and did that. And then after I did that, a few days later, Dave called me up to join the band. And we were, said we're going to go out on this 2-year world tour, blah, blah, all that stuff. And actually, I almost turned it down. I was worried. I was really working on some other projects at the time, and I didn't know very much about Pink Floyd, which was kind of funny. So I called some friends of mine up. I told Dave, well, let me think about it. So I called some friends of mine up and I said, I just played on this Pink Floyd record. And wow, you played on the Pink Floyd? Yes, I played on this Pink Floyd record. And then he called me to come play to join the band and, go off and tour and everything. And I said, I don't really know if I want to do it. And they're like, are you crazy? You got to do that. So that night, I remember going down to Tower Record that evening. It was open 24 hours. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I bought some Pink Floyd records, came home and listened to them, and decided, I think I should probably do this. Everybody was telling me it's a good thing to do. So I ended up taking the gig and very, very thankful. Probably one of the smartest decisions I've ever made because it definitely clearly changed my life. I learned a lot too. I learned tons about production. I learned mostly Dave Gilmour, who's my guru. He really taught me very interesting lessons about music, mainly about how to play melodies, because he's a real melody player. He's the master of playing beautiful melodies that people can remember. So he changed my playing because a lot of times saxophone players we play all these notes and all this stuff. And then I finally realized playing with him that it's all about playing melodies that people can understand. So he really influenced me a lot. And, it was really a trip going around the world a couple times with that group. It's amazing. It was a fun time.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine, that just hearing from you that you played or worked with Pink Floyd. So tell me a little bit about, what which albums did you play? Did you play music or with them, or how did you with their album, or what
Yeah,
did
no,
you do?
when we toured, we played a lot of the greatest hits. We played the new album, which was Momentary Lapse of Reason. And played a lot of the great hits from The Wall and from Dark Side of the Moon, all the great tunes. So those are all live records, and they've actually just released a whole new box set of what's called the Later Years, which is I haven't seen the whole box set yet. I've seen some cuts on YouTube, but it's pretty cool. I mean, they've took it and upsampled all the video, all the film up to 4K, high quality, re-edited, remixed. And so that's out now, and people can go see that. You can go see some of that on YouTube. And I hear on October 15th, they're actually going to be doing a broadcast of this in the theaters around the world. So if we have theaters open, but yeah, they're going to, on October, that'll be going down. So people can go check it out and see our tour and stuff.
Okay, well, that is such a great thing I think you have done. So tell me a little bit about any personal side of Roger and famous personalities you work with.
I'm sorry, the question one more time.
So any as a personal life or personal habits of Roger or any of the Pink Floyd members.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I mean, they're all, they like I said, Dave Gilmour was my guru. I love that guy. And then Nick was always very, very nice and very very calm, very English. It was very interesting. We'd be sitting there and you'd have 100,000 people out there and he'd be over there reading the paper, having a cup of tea like nothing was happening, right? So and then Rick, of course, who was really a very kind soul. Sorry to see, it was very sad that he passed. But great people. And I think the most interesting thing for me is so many of the big stars are actually very, very nice people. It's a lot of times it's the people that are actually below them that are kind of managing them that make it very difficult. But, for the most part, a lot of these people I've worked for have been great. Diana Ross, I played with her. She was an incredible influence on me. I learned a ton from her about stage presence and things. God, I played with so many people. I don't even know where to start. I was in Mick Fleetwood's band for a while, the Zoo, and he was very interesting. I mean, he's one of the great, what I'll call straight eighth drummers. He can really, he swings really hard. So he was fun to play with. Geez, I don't even know where to go. There's so many folks through the years. It's so interesting to even think back now and look and say, wow, I can't even believe all that time went by and all those experiences actually happened. Very thankful, very blessed. Very, very blessed.
I said Fleetwood Mac is definitely one of my favorites too. He's you're right. I mean, they both had a unique voice, and Diana Ross also a very strong voice.
Yep.
Very independent, and I think probably paved the way for new generation of female artists now we see today.
Absolutely.
so Diana Ross probably will always be legend, So,
Yep.
so tell me a little bit about your. So you mentioned about some of those English habits they had, drinking tea versus coffee. I am sure you love coffee, and
I love coffee. That's one thing
and
about coffee. Nobody can ever tell me you have a cup of coffee. Everything goes really well when you have a cup of coffee, right?
and that for British, tea is always, they need to have tea in
Oh
cup,
yeah.
and then so that must be something, I think, unique to see, right, for you all
Oh
to
yeah. I mean, it's a total different, kind of habits and lifestyle and things. And I spent a lot of time in England, so I really started to get a handle on all their, their kind of nuances and the things, the way they do things. And it's just fascinating. Humans are very interesting. They're very interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And there can be difference culturally between British and Canada and US, sure, a bit. So tell me a little bit also about Toto. I know you
Mm.
mentioned you work for them too, right?
Yeah, that's a very. I mean, that band was, for me, was really very important. I actually played in a kid band when I was young, with Jeff Beccaro and David Page, who were the founders of Toto later on in the later years. And Jeff Beccaro, the drummer, who has passed now, unfortunately, he is considered one of the greatest drummers of all time. He was on close to 5,000 records, I think,
Mm.
before he passed away, and on major number one hits and incredible albums, and one of those guys. So he was always my barometer. I mean, I always wanted to, basically what happened was we played in the kid band. I was a trumpet player and I was the worst guy in the band. I played second trumpet at the time.
Mhm.
And I was actually didn't care about music when I was in high school. I was studying to be an architect, and I had just landed a job for a company called Audiodyne, where I was drawing exploded views of parts and machines and things like that. And that was back in the days when we had to use a ruler and a pencil. And so I then got in this band with Jeff and all of them, and we started winning all the Battle of the Bands. And I just realized at that moment that I really wanted to be a musician because, number one, there were a lot of girls in the front row. And I thought, this is much more fun than sitting in the back drawing all day long. So at that time, I kind of shifted my whole uh, thinking and moved it into music. Well, I wasn't good enough to really get any music jobs, but I did take my drafting skills, my drawing skills, and I started studying. Took up music copying. And back in the day, music copying was, for those that don't know, was a composer would do a score all out by hand. He would then hand me the score, and I'd have to write out the trumpet part, the trumpet two part, the trumpet three part, all individual parts, because there were no computers in those days to do that. And so that's how I made a living and stayed in the music business, was doing as a music copyist while I was studying. And then always in the back of my mind, all of my buddies, Jeff and Dave, they all took off, right? They were on fire. They were, Jeff was doing the Sonny and Cher show back in the day, and then they did the Boz Scaggs records. And so they were totally on fire. And that was always in the back of my mind. If I keep practicing, I'll be able to finally get to a point where I'll be good enough to get into the business. And so when I did get called, after I played with Supertramp, I got called. They called me up to come play with the band. So I toured with them and played with them. And that's really an incredible musical group. Those musicians are extraordinary. I mean, they're on so many records, considered some of the top musicians ever in the world. So that was a real, that really made me feel good. It was a real boost to know that I finally got to a point where I could actually play with them again and do it, not from when we were kids, but later on. So yeah, it's a great band, incredible music. Incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the names you're telling is they are such amazing, and they have, I don't think, not to devalue today's musician, but I think those are legends, in 80s, 70s, 90s, even early 2000s. So those artists, a lot of new talent actually borrowed heavily from them. And I don't think anybody can match Pink Floyd or Toto or their caliber even of today.
Well, it's a different time, because what happens when we were making records in those days, it was more about we didn't have all the tools we had right now. You had started out, I had one of the first 4-track machines where you could overdub 4 parts at a time, and then it went to 8-track, and then 16, then 24, and 48-track. And then now we have like Pro Tools that can give you unlimited amount of tracks and the ability to edit and fix everything. Well, when we were making records then, you had to go in and virtually play. There wasn't much editing you could do. I mean, you could punch in and fix some little parts here and there, but it wasn't like today where you can put anything down and they can retune it, fix it, change it, flip it, switch it, do anything they want with it. Those days we had to perform. So there was a certain set of magic that happens when you actually play a solo from top to bottom, right? Not just a little segment, a little segment, a little segment. We were just working on a track the other day with some folks, and they were doing vocals, and they were picking out every word and then piecing together the actual vocal, right? It wasn't back when we were making records, you had to sing the whole part, and what you got was what you got. So there was a certain set of magic that would happen when you were in the studio playing with everybody and just having to capture the moment. And those moments transcends time. I mean, it's the moment in the honesty and what was being played at that moment, the space the people were in their head gets captured on that record on vinyl, and it just stands the test of time. Where today, I believe we've become victims of overchoice. In other words, we have so much power to fix and change everything that we completely take out the parts that can be fantastic. So, I mean, a lot of times on the record, sometimes when it's a little out of tune, it actually sounds like there's more of you, and there's little things that you don't have to fix anymore in order to that they fix now because your intellect says fix it. So I've always said that on the recording console there's a button on there that you can push. It's called the solo button. So if I've got 24 tracks, if I hit the solo button, I can listen to just that one track, which might be the guitar or the keyboard or the bass. And we would used to make records where you'd make the record and or you record that night, you loved it, it sounded fantastic, get up the next day, get a cup of coffee, listen to it, and then you go, wow, that one little section there, he's a little bit out of tune, it needs to be fixed. Then you start fixing all the parts, and then you've actually mixed out all the soul that was part of it. It's almost like these little mistakes are acts of God, right? They put them on the record, and those things are what makes all these great records, is that you can feel and basically hear people thinking or not thinking, let's put it that way, when they're playing. So, yep.
Yeah, and that is such I think beautifully said. What you have described is, when we have artists and they are performing, and now they have all the technology, and they can get synth, all those music, and they can do bit of recording. But you're right, when they were doing all long recording, that must be, it blossoms into something unique, and then gets some different product. Maybe they never scripted that in their
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, it's really a lot too about people playing in the room. When we record tracks in the day, the drummer be there, the bass player, the guitar player, everybody be there, and we'd cut a basic track. And then it was the spirit of the room, and you do multiple takes until everybody was in the right space, and you captured that moment of all those people playing. Now you go in and everything's, I'll go in and I'll do a saxophone. Nobody's ever there, or, it's very seldom you'll cut a track with the entire band. I mean, they do it, more in jazz and things like that, because that's a spontaneous kind of art form. But for most pop records and things, it's very seldom that they'll take and record a complete rhythm section all at the same time and then overdub on top of it. Now the drum machine, they may use a drum machine to build the track, and then they'll bring the drummer in later. And, it's a total Frankenstein model to making records today. And I think there's a lot of validity in that, but there's also a lot of danger in that, because it allows you to take all the soul away. And I think, like you said earlier, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, the Stones, those records will stand the test of time. There are those artists captured. Nowadays, I don't see a whole lot of these records are going to be the same kind of, at least these pop records, that will have that kind of longevity and that same sort of fandom that happens. I think a lot of people, those will kind of just go away, and the Floyd and Stones and Zeppelin and those bands will still be around.
And that is true. So I think what has happened is there's a lot of commercialization has happened. So people do mass productions, and anybody can play now. Using iPhone, those synthesizers and everything. but those artists, those natural, they had that ability to record and deliver without much, those perfectionists.
Right.
I think, personally, I feel the same. 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even late, or early, sorry, 2000. After that, I don't listen to a lot of the music, but maybe one track or something. But it's not same. It's not same. Still, you can put on 80s or Pink Floyd anytime, anytime, and you will never be disappointed. But
No, I
I don't.
totally agree. You know, my favorite records, I've been listening to the same handful of records for 30 years now. I mean, I just listen to the same records because they get better every time I listen to them, and they just stand the test of time. So it's hard for me to go back. You know, I mean, I like some of the things that are going on. I think what we're seeing on the internet today, think we're seeing artists. I mean, that's the beauty of YouTube, is we're finding artists that are really incredible, right? They may never make it mainstream and whatever, but there's incredible artists. Some of these kids that are coming up that we would have never seen before are extraordinary. You can, you know,
Yeah,
it makes you got to go. You hear some of these kids, it's so sophisticated and so soulful and so educated in the way they play, that you have to believe in reincarnation, because you just say, how can this 9-year-old kid do something that you've just spent a lifetime trying to figure out at 8 years old or 9 years old? Where does that come from? Right. You know, I'm a big, consciousness is my favorite subject on the planet. And I always feel that, really the great players and stuff drop to no mind. And it's really the universe playing through them. And I think what happens with the kids these days that can play like that, I mean, there's some of them are just extraordinary. 9 years old, 8 years old, playing like virtuosos, but not so much playing just the notes. It's the sophistication and the soul that's behind it, which is really usually something that takes years and years to get to learn over time of training your ears to listen for and feel, right? So yeah, it's fascinating. So I think that there's pros and cons, but the good news is I think that old music that's still there, the Stones and all those guys, that stuff's going to stick around for years. And it's just different times, different types of things.
and that's well said. That will definitely have, with social media and so forth. We have a lot of performers, which is a good thing. But the only thing is that I still see there's a monopoly on up in the awards and a higher ranking. I still have that, so they would not appreciate. Still, they will kind of give it to. So I see that these new talent is coming up, but have they reached up to the top, or they're gonna make up to the top? Probably only time will tell. But I wish they do, because that's gonna bring music and film and everything we stand for more diverse, more creative. Because creativity, I see a lot of creative artists are not making money,
Yeah.
so they are gonna actually disappear, or
Well,
they will be really in bad shape. So
yeah.
that's, I feel sorry for that, because
Well, yeah, I mean, no question. I mean, today it's really the world has shifted. It's really, we've moved into a direct to consumer business model now. The
mm,
idea of, having to sell to millions of people to make a living and getting out there and all that, because you can't sell music anymore. There's no place to sell music. You can't buy it. Only thing you can sell is maybe buying. Now vinyl records are being sold again, but where do you buy music? What do you listen? I mean, CDs, you can't, there's no place to play those. So it's really the streaming service, the live streaming or streaming in general. But the problem is that business model is horrible for 98% of the musicians, because, the model is basically, it's roughly about $5,000 per million streams. So if I'm an artist, I get a million streams on one of my records, I'll get roughly $5,000. But the problem is only roughly 2 to 3% of the entire Spotify catalog even has a million streams. So it's really, again, it's the top tier that's making any money off of live streaming, and the rest of the people are. So that's why you have to think about, well, as an artist today, what can you sell? And number two, who do you sell to? So this is really about the new model, which, when it's been a model, it's actually been around for a while, but it's really becoming to fruition now because of this COVID thing, forcing everybody into new business strategies. that there's a Kevin Kelly from Wired Magazine quite a few years ago coined a term, 1,000 true fans. And a
Mm.
true fan is somebody that will spend $100 a year on you, whatever you're selling, whatever you're doing. If I have 1,000 of those fans, there's my first $100,000 in revenue. So it's not about millions. It's about really capturing a small or going small and building a repeatable model. Because what's the good news is it we have we have access to the audience now. We have access to the data, which we never had before as artists. The record labels owned all the data. Now
Mm.
we have access to data. We have access to the audience. Twitter's a 24-hour cocktail party. I can go on and start building fans and build my own audience. And more importantly, with my phone now, it's a worldwide broadcast network. Look at
Mm.
this. We're doing a live show here, and I'm using my cell phone. So we're in a. I can start a live stream instantaneously. So the model for artists, for independent artists, I think is the greatest time in history, because at no other time would I able to have where I can just go find my audience, build a relationship with them. I have the phone, and what's important is I can take the order. It's like a bank. I can take your credit card or whatever, and I can get paid. So the new business model is really about finding those super fans, building products that they will like around either the several things that you can sell as an artist is one, the relationship. So if you have the kind of lifestyle people care about, well, they'll pay to be part of your subscription or whatever to be part of that. Or lifestyle products that tie to that lifestyle you can sell, or you can sell an experience. And that's really basically it. So actually my new company, Think Experience, is really about being where is the opportunity now for artists, and where's entertainment going. And we're really focused on the idea of experience based. I believe that that's really the one thing people will pay for. Think we just did before, just prior to all this COVID stuff that went on, we had just finished doing 40 shows, sold out in a 360-degree immersive dome in downtown Los Angeles. And what we play is we did a Think Floyd experience. So we were playing Pink Floyd with an all-star band, Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction, Kenny Olds from Kid Rock's band, Norwood Fisher from Fishbone, and a variety of great players doing this Floyd thing in this 360 dome where you actually laid down, and some seats actually were connected to the music and you could feel the experience. And those shows were selling like crazy. So the new business models for artists is really about building that relationship with the super fan. We also know through the data of the super fan that roughly 60 to 70% of all your revenue will come from 2 to 3% of your audience. So that super fan, that smaller group of people. So if I have 100,000 people, let's say they're following me, it's really 1 to 3,000 of those people are really the people that will engage with you and spend the money and buy the stuff. So it's really about how do I find my audience, build a relationship with them, and then create stuff that I can sell them that is not necessarily music based. It can be experience based where I'm playing a live show, or it can be some lifestyle products that tie into what I'm doing. But you really have to think differently now as an artist. You can't just be, well, I write songs and smoke fatties all day and I'm going to make it a hit. That isn't the game. You have to think about being an artist, but you also have to think about being a business person and understanding how to combine the two together. Because if you can, it's an incredible opportunity to really make some revenue as an independent artist right now. But it's not like the traditional ways. It's really about a direct relationship, direct to consumer, direct cash coming to you from them. So I'm actually very excited about the time.
Mm. No, no, that's true. There's pros and cons, and the game has changed, and so we don't have those records, we don't have those CDs, and we don't have only streaming service and maybe legal and illegal downloads. The problem is those illegal downloads, and then once even anything out there, anybody can send it, and they could have thousands of or millions of download illegally, and then you're stuck with nothing. You don't get it. And that is so true. Technology has really changed. And look at the theaters now with COVID. All the movies are all gone. Nobody's gonna go watch it. Right.
Yeah, I mean everything. We're actually we're working with it's called here in the States called Save the Stages. There's basically 90% of all independent stages, bars, not restaurants, but music venues are about ready to go out of business. So we're doing a huge push right now with a whole bunch of folks to really figure out how we save the stations. There's legislation going into the government about how to help these guys because our industry has been completely decimated for all our live gigs and everything. And then you look at the ripple effect, the guys that work those gigs, the people that are all that. I mean, it's a mess. But on the positive side, I see new models coming together, and I think because of what we've seen in this last 6 months is basically compressed what we thought where we would be technology wise in the next in 5 years. We can beds down to 5 months. So this whole idea of doing these live streams, two-way, people hanging out with their friends, with four of their friends on FaceTime, and one's watering, one's cooking, and it's like a virtual experience. So I think as things move forward, the new model is going to be around a live experience where people go to, but it'll be limited amount of live people. And then it's going to be tied into live streaming of that event, but it's really the two-way stream that makes sense. It's not just the outgoing part. It's the fact that I can bring people into my shows through the stream. So we just did an experiment where we set up on a stage, full-blown stage, and I had them put 18 80-inch video monitors right around the band, and then I brought the whole audience in, and then we played to that set of those monitors with all those people. And it was actually very fascinating because I could take requests, I could talk to people. I was seeing buddies in Europe, I was seeing people all over, and they all looked like they were in the front row because their faces are right there, right? So it was very fascinating. So then I started thinking even more. I said, well, then now that works. That's really great for the band. Feels like they're playing to somebody. But if I could only give them something, right, to where we could interact. Well, delivery services allow for that. So I could what we're doing. Think we're launching Livin.live, which is a whole new type of programming that ties in, like I said, a limited premium experience, show experience tied to a live stream where you can bring, if you buy a ticket, you can bring 5 of your friends virtually, and they'll be up on the screen. So you can bring your friends with you to the show. And then prior to the show, I'm delivering you a box full of all kinds of cool stuff that we can do together, right, in the live thing. So it's really going to be a combination. And I believe that's going to be where we're going to be moving forward. Even after this thing opens up and things start to go, I don't think it'll ever quite be the same. People going into clubs like they did before. I think it's going to be a little different, a hybrid model. And that's what we're doing, is focusing on that right now.
Sorry. I say it was pleasure talking to you and listening to you. So we'll reach the end of the program.
Okay.
So any final thoughts you would have for us?
I think only this: be kind, everybody. Be kind. And what I would tell everybody, here's one that I think is important. There's a new film that just came out called Social Dilemma. And it is a very important piece of work that everybody should watch. And we'll get an understanding of how all these networks work and how we're being manipulated through a lot of what's going on in social media. And I think that's really one of the most important things we can do, and especially for the kids, to understand what happens every time they click or like a picture and all those things, on how that's actually tracking and doing and manipulating and feeding and the algorithms. And I think it's a very important subject, especially when you're seeing so much discourse and you're kind of wondering what's going on. So all I would tell everybody is, please go watch Social Dilemma. It's a very important piece of work right now, I think, for humanity. And be kind, and don't worry. It all works out the way it's supposed to work, and we're all going to be okay.
Thank you, sir. It was pleasure having you. And
thank you.
Take care, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.